What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. LA, we're still here. Behind me, 3 997 cabs built by Nakai-San. There's a build going on behind me. Our friend Sid, you might remember him from a video 4 years ago, 2020. We were at RWB HQ, and at that time there had been no customer built 997s, but the tides have changed and now Nakai is only building 997s. Kind of crazy. I'm a little bit torn. I don't know about you guys, but today we're gonna talk to Sid about the car. He did this build omakase style, which basically means we'll leave the details up to you. So Nakai-san picked the color. Sid basically just painted the car up in Canada, sent it down here with all the parts. He had no idea what it was gonna look like or anything like that. Really cool stuff. So let's head on into the build. We'll talk to Aki-san as well, who painted the car, and we'll see how exactly he found the color and decided to paint it the way he did. Let's go check out the build, and then we're off to SEMA in a week from now. So I have no idea what's gonna happen, how the build's gonna go, how the drive is going to go, but we'll take you guys along for the ride, see what we can capture along the way. Let's go. So we're not just at any old shop in LA. This is K-Speed, owned by RWB family, Koyama-san, who is one of the many familiar faces you'll see around Nakai if you ever see him work in person. Over the course of the day, friends came and went, but considering more than a few 997s were built in the weeks leading up to SEMA, this build was less of a show than I would have expected. But who am I kidding? I know Sid better than that. This was the opposite of a quote-unquote corporate build. And yes, those take place. The red carpet, the sponsors, the Instagram invites, you've seen it. This weekend though, none of that.
Do you know what happened to this car?
No.
Nakai-san was driving this car on the highway, and a 4x4 with big mud tires grinded the tire into the door on the highway, and then the guy ran away.
Whoa. Before the kit was on, or this was after?
Before the kit was
oh
on.
Yeah, because I was gonna say it's not.
Aki-san did a bunch of magic to it just now.
Wow.
And nothing happened. And before it was all dented and scuffed and everything.
That's insane.
And they got a dentless repair guy to come pull it a bit.
Yeah.
And he also did some stuff from the inside to push it out.
Right.
And then polished it and touched it up, and now we're here.
It looks flawless.
And the thing that's awesome about this car is it's owned by Inoue-san, which is the mechanic helper for Nakai-san. He came from Japan, first time in LA, and Aki-san wants to make sure that he has the best experience ever and gives him the warmest welcome to North America.
I love that.
This is why we're here.
Is this the last cut?
This is the final 2 inches of the build, or final inch of the build.
Wow.
Yes.
Real teamwork right there.
Yeah, so what do you think, Marcus?
It's pretty insane. I don't know how you had you were able to just give Nakai-san creative control.
Yep, that's what it's called, right? Omakase. You gotta let go completely. It means I'll leave it up to you.
What did that feel like? What was the nerve level? Were you nervous?
No, it actually felt very liberating because I see a lot of these owners wanting to come out and like tell everybody, oh, I picked this exact thing for my car and all that. And I did that for my last build and I enjoyed it. But then, you know, we met each other, what, 8 years ago, and then now we're here. So I feel like he's had a bit of a relationship with even both of us at this point. So he knows what Vancouver is missing. And it's definitely missing some color.
Like this.
Exactly.
The color's insane.
Wild. So we call it Rambling Rose.
Rambling Rose.
Yes.
Did you expect this?
Absolutely not.
You don't take it off. Take it off tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So this one, only this one?
Yeah. And then I see flex and then we can take it off later.
はい、わかりました。See, I think so. See, I push it. Still soft.
Oh wow, yeah. So even if it moves around just a little bit, it's fine. Yeah. So after the build, Sid was talking about air-cooled cars versus water-cooled cars in a way that hadn't really been explained to me before, and he's gonna do a way better job of telling you guys his perspective on it. So I'm just gonna let him talk on how he views the air-cooled builds versus these newer 997 builds.
The air-cooled cars, in my humble opinion, is a tribute to the original 1970s, 1980s race cars that ran on the Nürburgring, the turbocharged 934.5s, certain 935 models as well. Porsche only made a handful of original ones, so many of the customer cars were actually 930 turbos that were originally purchased and then modified to the same spec of the Porsche series race cars, and so that they could participate in the Nürburgring races. The body that Nakai-San does on these cars are simply no different than what they would do in the 1970s, where they would put fiberglass panels onto the car to widen them, but often they would be much more comprehensive builds with full rebuilt suspensions, not just coilovers, complete new geometry, and the cars often would have 500 plus horsepower. So a lot of the look of the RWBs you see nowadays are very much so inspired by that, although each owner has a different purpose for their build. Yeah, and the 997s themselves are not of that nature, in my opinion, because the full-on race car versions of the 997s are the GT3 Cup Rs, which are not much wider than the original size cars. So the 997s, in my opinion, are more or less a design from the imagination of Nakai-san, as opposed to something that he had something to already base it on. So as a result, it's more experimental, in my opinion. A lot of form and function is still yet to be researched because we're still working on the race cars. As of right now, he's actually making the molds for the race kits. Currently, there are 5 Idlers cars that have been purchased so far, as I know. 3 997 turbos and 2 997 GT3s. And the other 2 or 3 cars that he's going to purchase are yet to be determined. But lately, he's been really into the turbos.
中井さんがホームセンターとかに置いてあるカラーサンプルの写真を送ってきてくれて、それに合わせてくれって言われて、でそれに僕が色を作って合わせて、でその画像を中井さんに送って、それを何回か繰り返して決めました。まあせっかく塗るから自分の経験をもとに光によって色が変わるように調合しました。あと RWB のポルシェはパステルカラーが割と多いので、透かしの色がパステル調に見えるように調合してRWB のポルシェみたいな感じに作りました。今回はオーナーのシド君がものすごい RWB ポルシェに熱意がある方で、どうしてもすごくいいものを作りたいということで、で今回が、外国では初めてのお任せスタイルになるので、すごいそのポルシェを RWB ポルシェを作る情熱がものすごい高かったんで、僕もそれに応えるようにできる限りのことはしました。
Well, here it is, Sid's RWB 997 4S. It's finished in all its glory. I wasn't there for the end of the build, but a lot of you guys probably have opinions on Nakai building 997s. For the longest time, for as long as I can remember, since going to my first build in 2016, Sid's build, he's only built air-cooled cars. Now, was there speculation over the years that he was eventually going to move on to the later cars? Notice how he skipped 996? I did. But the challenge, of course, with 997 is they're just inherently not quite as cool as air-cooled cars, in my opinion. Like when I look at the 911 lineup, the G-body cars, the air-cooled cars, those have a more raw kind of feel. So the question then becomes, how do you bring the rough world dynamic, that raw feel, to a 997 that's a lot smoother, more refined, a little bit more polished, right? And when I was with Sid at RWB HQ in Japan in 2020, we saw basically the prototype of the first 997. And I wasn't particularly in love with it. I was like, I don't know if this is the right decision. Would people like the design? And I have to admit, after seeing Sid's car here in person, not even mentioning the color, it is incredible. It flows much nicer than the original kits that I saw, and then Nakai's gone ahead and designed and kind of taken inspiration from the 935 wing, 930 and 965 wing back here, whale tail. I think it flows really nicely, but there's a lot more to talk about, so let's go for a drive. I don't know if I ever thought Nakai would build 997s, and I think a lot of people were in the same boat. You know, there's always been speculation when or if Nakai would begin going towards the water-cooled stuff. I mean, that's always been the case with Porsches. The pre-water-cooled models, pre-996, G-body cars, all the air-cooled cars are just more gritty. They're more aesthetically pleasing to like that rough world aesthetic. That's what Nakai's built his entire life around. I was gonna say brand, but it's his entire life at this point, right? My friend Sid, who owns this car, he told me something very interesting at the build when we were watching Nakai build this like 2 days ago. I asked him, I'm like, did you ever think that Nakai was going to build 997s? And he's like, well, I don't think anybody thought he was ever going to do it because it just didn't seem like his style. And to me, it kind of somewhat still doesn't, but I'll keep my opinions to myself, right? But Sid goes, no, Nakai just never owned one. Nakai said he just never built 997s or never thought about it because he never owned one. He never knew what the car was about. And I thought that was like so pinpoint accurate to just kind of look at how Nakai runs his life. He's like so head down, work. Hey, whoa, I have like a moment to breathe. Let's look around. So he actually owns a 997 GT3 or multiple, I'm not sure. And I believe he owns, correct me if I'm wrong, a 997 GT3 RS2 or multiple. I'm not totally sure on that. He has a ton of cars, if you guys don't know. But he bought one and he drove one, and then that's when the 997 project came about. And I just think that's like such like a natural progression as far as him as a driver. And there's also another side of this, because now that the air-cooled chapter is, for now, shut, it's like those air-cooled cars are inevitably going to, quote-unquote, go up in value. Now, it's always kind of a taboo thing. Hey, are you supposed to ever sell the RWB that Nakai built for you? Probably not, but people do, and it's, you know, it's not really frowned upon. Maybe in some circles it is, but everybody has their circumstances, life circumstances, whatever the case may be. And those cars, at least for me, will be ultimately the best ones, the coolest. But that's why Sid has both now. So Sid's car, really cool. Yes, of course, it is Tiptronic, so there is that. It is a hardtop though. I think it looks sick. It's stunning. He's going to use it quite a bit. In fact, it's likely going to get daily driven when he gets back to Vancouver. He's driving this, by the way, from California to Vegas and then back up to Vancouver, so you'll probably see a bunch of rock chips on it. The fit and finish, even when driving, like there's no rubbing, no scraping. Nakai's basically taken the last couple days to dial everything in. This is a lot easier to drive than Sid's other cars, air-cooled Targa. It's so much easier to drive. Power steering has a lot to do with that. But also, you know, the feeling of the 997 just comes through. And I have a feeling that a lot more people will actually drive these cars a little bit more, which is good. Now off to SEMA, let's go. All right, we're leaving from Orange County. We got a couple of stops on the way to Vegas. It's gonna be hectic. I have no idea how many cars are here. 20, 30. 20, 30 cars maybe. It is such a stark contrast going from the super private build with Sid's 997 all the way to Vegas, where Nakai will be doing a 997 GT3 build. Yeah, man. Oh, sweet ride. There you go. Huge variety of cars here too. Of course, a ton of old school, you know, G-body cars, 930 generation cars, but also a ton of 997s. Probably all the most recent ones from around LA, and then cars like this, first gen R8 and a 991 GT2 RS. See you in Vegas. All right, you guys, we made it to Yermo, California. We're about a third of the way there. If you guys remember Will's car, LS3 in the back. He said it's running a little bit hot, about 120 degrees Celsius the whole way. He's got a few cooling issues. He did do some modifications to the front end since we last saw the car. So we did cut some new holes in the front, but still having a few cooling issues, he said. Just crazy variety. Nakai-san's driving a cab, of course. Not my taste, but it's his. I mean, you can't argue. I guess that's right. You're in the California desert. You want the top down. There's Sid's car. I kind of missed the end of the build, unfortunately. But you can see Nakai named the car and painted it on there. But yeah, the idea is we're gonna get into SEMA tonight. This is the first day of SEMA today, so leave it up to RWB to show up fashionably late. That's the cool way to do it. And then tonight, there is an RWB meet at a hookah lounge, I believe, somewhere just outside Vegas. But yeah, that's about it. Let's continue the drive, get to Vegas. There's the chopper. guys, we made it to the dry lake bed. We're about, actually I don't really know, an hour or two. There's Joe in the background. Tons of cars out here. We're just taking a break, and then we'll embark on the final stint over to Vegas. So many cars. It's cool with RWBs. Not only is there so much variety, but also you see them in so many different backdrops before the build, during the build, after the build, at idlers racing in Japan with Nakai, at a car show, at kind of a huge mainstream event like SEMA being built, but then out here on the lake bed, some people doing donuts, some people just hanging out, and we've got some of the outsiders there. First gen R8, 240 out here, 997 Turbo, 997 Carrera, 2018 NSX. These are really cool. I mean, RWBs aside, a lot of the other cars stand out as well, but these are probably a good buy now that they don't make them anymore. And they were not really loved when they came out. The GTR always kind of overshadowed it, which I never fully understood. I would much rather have second gen NSX over an R35 GTR, but that's just me. Slant nose 930 turbo. I've got to show you guys this one. That's what I'm talking about. 930 turbo slant nose. Wow, beautiful, stunning car. So 997 has clearly taken priority on the build calendar, but despite that, it seems Nakai is not in a rush to close the air-cooled chapter of RWB. You guys may have seen Dino's recent 964 build at HQ in Japan. Great video, by the way. I have not seen a build video done quite like that. Really a pleasure to watch. You guys should go check it out. His build is an exception to the new way forward for RWB. Perhaps only by special request, the old cars will continue to transform, but most people are itching for the new thing. And Nakai's focus is on perfecting the 997s and offering 911 owners a slightly more accessible and cost-effective way to build their dream cars. That is, unless you're going GT3 or turbo, of course. While the next generation RWB might not be for everyone, that's been the story with these cars the whole way through. You guys know this. I love these cars, but not all of them, and that's the way it should be. Some of them will see the track, and some will never see more than a wash before Cars and Coffee, but as the 997 chapter rolls on, the style remains. It's purposefully rough, each panel and fender designed to be replaced easily and quickly if they get damaged, but ultimately, as an owner, your risk tolerance on the slider between art and apex is up to you.